In the Kenyan market today, there is a stiff competition in the compact crossover SUV market. And one of the leading car currently is the Mazda CX5, especially the diesel one, now that we know how to deal with the diesel shenanigans around the Mazda. But what if I told you the key I'm holding today is of a car that can give you an equivalent torque, an equivalent power, and better driving dynamics than the Mazda CX5? And that is the 2019 VW Tiguan. So guys, welcome to another special episode of Conversations Kanisa. I'll be your host, Papa Askofu himself, ready to take you through this sermon. If you're in Uganda or Gambachi, kama wewe ni Mtanzania waambaje na wase wa Kenya ni aje mna? So you guys are wondering, I'm wearing a very nice white shirt with a label called Kashua. So what is Kashua? Kashua is that secret, is that thing that I promised you I'll be sharing with you pretty soon. So from next month, Kashua will be a platform that will give you a guarantee of selling, buying, and ultimately living with your car without stress. So let's get into the review of the 2019, the last of its design before it's facelifted into the 2020 VW Tiguan. For this series of the VW Tiguan, nothing has changed much. That is all the way from 2016 to 2019. So this is the last face of the VW Tiguan before it changes face, that is from 2020. And the design language is quite simple. I love the subtle design language of VWs. I think all VWs right now are kicking it when it comes to a simple, minimalistic design. You have your grille that crosses all the way the entire of this car with chrome appendages with a VW logo, LED headlights with LED daylight running, na hapa chini uko na HID fog lights, which will make the work done. Nothing much to talk about. You have a parking sensors, and they are right here with a front-facing camera, and this front-facing camera is all connected to the system that makes this car a 5-star rated in terms of safety. And moving all the way to the side profile of the VW Tiguan, it's kind of boxy and stylish at the same time, with lines crossing the entire frame of this car. And you can have your plastic appendages here. Again, these will protect your car when you're doing your adventure driving na utagwaragwara gari. Again, your chrome appendages just remind you that there's a bit of luxury going on with this particular car. Now, I'll start with the ground clearance. So what you get here is 149 millimeters of ground clearance, and the best way to measure is Alex Mwanzo anaweza toshea hapa. Ukisimamisha Alex Mwanzo hapa, anatoshea mahali kama hapa, that short neighbor. So that is what we are going to use every day to measure the ground clearance of every car that we review on Conversation. Away from that, moving at the front, you have size 18 wheels with very nice alloy rims. Again, suspension mbele, it's a McPherson strut, and the rear we have independent suspension, Matlink independent suspension, which makes this car handle quite pretty good. To give you a bit of an adventurous look, again, you have your roof rails crossing the entire face of this car from the front all the way to the rear, na tena ziko into your chrome bits or touches, which is quite nice. And then you have your chrome again across the entire door ya mbele na nyuma. One thing I love about the VW Tiguan, just like the CRV, you can see the windows are quite big. Ya mbele doesn't have your normal blackened out or privacy windows, but the rear you have your privacy window. It's not as dark as most cars I'm used to, but it's there to give you a bit of privacy. Kuja hapa nyuma. So rolling out the rear again, the boxy design of this car flows all the way to the rear. One thing with VW, and especially this Tiguan, people who love SUVs love the boxy design. Like, you know, you will get this boxy design on bigger cars like the Toyota J250, and this boxiness plus small touches of curves here and there just makes the VW Tiguan quite a good looker. So hapa nyuma, your LED taillights which break into two, again to just allow you open up your tailgate. Hapa chini tuko na two exhaust tips, but they are all attached together, so you're not getting one there and the other one there. Your parking sensors to make this car quite awesome and easy to maneuver and park in tight spaces. Something else that I will want to show you about is the practicality. An electronic tailboot which has two buttons. So the first button is what you click on to just close the tailgate immediately, but the second button is a very nice convenience button. So imagine you've come from a grocery shopping, unataka tu weke mzigo yako haraka haraka, but you don't have time to press that button, or you're picking something. Let's assume you're picking something. So this is the button you press. So when I press it, it starts counting. I pick my mzigo, then I just walk away. Then it will close by itself. Quite a nice technology from VW. So technically you don't wait for your tailgate to close before you leave. And something more interesting is, once you have that button pressed and you walk a few meters away with your key inside the pocket, the car will automatically lock itself. Let's talk about practicality. And before I talk about practicality, because that's another important aspect of why you will buy the VW Tiguan, it has better practical space. Actually, I can rate it among the top 3 in terms of practicality and boot space. Now, your electronic tailgates are courtesy of these humongous dampers here, which are electronically controlled to allow this car to, close the tailgate and bring it back. And the reason why this is important is because the wires actually run through this, unlike other technologies where you have a different set of technology which makes these things finicky to operate sometimes. VW have made it possible to have that through that. So ukitaka kungoa hii kitu, you open here, and it's easy. You can actually just remove your tailgate. I'm saying this because we are Kenyans and sometimes we get into accidents and you need to change your tailgate. Let's talk about practicality. Once you have a hard cover, unlike other cars where you have a soft material that you pull, ile ya kuvuta, this one is quite simple. You have a hard cover that again you can place something on top. But let me just remove this hard cover for a minute. And I know you guys said you want better practical ways to measure the practicality of these cars. So I don't know, what are we going to use? Because Mbugua is no longer the Mbugua we knew. Umemwingiza gym is looking very awesome, kijana mtanashati. So now it seems we will work with this one. So how much practical boot space do you get in this car? So it gets around 627 liters of boot space, even though you guys don't understand what that is. But technically you can fit 3 or 4 good suitcases that will make you travel with your family anytime, any day. But let's talk about other more interesting stuff. Some more special features that you get in the Tiguan. One is this VW net that protects you from having your pet jump to the front side of the car. You know, the guys from abroad like driving their pets inside their car and zinapumulia inches. But as Africans, I think VW knew that our dogs will stay in the boot, so they give you that one. More practicality options. So number 1, you have your flat boot space, which allows you to bring things in and out quite smoothly. But as if that is not enough, you can actually adjust the space here and have another sunken option, so you can move that, and now that will give you more practical boot space. And something more interesting is you have a provision for a space saver. So in case you want to buy an extra spare wheel tire, wamekupatia provision of having that one there as well. Now let's get to more interesting things. Let me remove this one first, so that we get into the juicy stuff. You know, SUVs are meant to be practical, so I'm going to give you all the options. Number 1, you can actually fold your seats. That's how you release it. And now what you get here, it can go flat. I need to take it flat. There you go. Perfect. So you have around 1,628 liters of practical boot space. Remember, the CRV in this category had 1,820 something. So you can see why in this class the CRV is actually kicking the heads of all these SUVs. But this is among the best in this category. The CX5 is behind it. Most cars are actually behind it in terms of boot space and practical. So it's a car that you can actually take to your awesome family trips, and maybe just haul your friends and enjoy your moments in wherever place you want to go. And before I talk about the engine and transmission that you find in the VW Tiguan, I will want to bring you to this badging here. So you have a 2.0 TDI 4Motion. So these are 2000cc diesel turbocharged direct injection engine. But what I want to talk about is the 4Motion. So 4Motion is technically four-wheel or all-wheel drive system that you find on the VW Tiguan. But there is a catch. So on the VW group, there are two types of all-wheel drive systems. So you'll find one labeled the 4Motion, which is mostly on VWs, and that uses what we call the Haldex all-wheel drive system, like what you'll find in this particular car. And the difference is, in this particular car, this car is front wheel bias. It can only kick power to the rear tires once it requires it to do so. That's on demand, and does that through an electronic clutch system. But if you're buying, let's say, an Audi Q5 that has a quattro all-wheel drive system, then it switches its name because it becomes what we call the Tosen all-wheel drive system. So Tosen is basically, in full, is torque sensing. So in the Audi Q5, the way the quattro all-wheel drive system that is Tosen incentivized work is it actually sends 50% of power at the rear and 50% power at the front. And the unique and special thing about it is it has the ability to send 75 power at the front or at the rear axle when you demand it, and that makes it a better car when it comes to drifting and making your awesome, beautiful, adventurous drive on the tarmac. That's why people prefer to buy the quattro than the 4Motion. But the 4Motion is good when it comes to fuel economy, because most of the time this car will be a front wheel drive, so it saves you a bit in terms of fuel economy. So let's talk about the engine and what you find at the front of this car, the transmission type, and talk about, is it as reliable and is it as good as any engine that you'll find in either the Mazda CX5 Diesel or the alternatives in this market and segment. So what you find under the hood of this VW Tiguan is an engine that had a history of problems, wars. In fact, there's something that is called the Dieselgate scandal, and it's claimed that this engine had dodged some few emission standards in Europe. So again, the early versions of this engine, this is the EA288. VW have a way of naming the engine. So this is the EA288. It came to replace the previous version of the TDI engines that were 2 liter, and the previous versions are the one that had a lot of problems. In fact, if there is a car that people avoided and cried tears on, was the previous version of this particular engine. But let's see, how does this particular engine fare on in this time and zone? I think there has been a lot of revisions. In fact, this particular one, that is this car, is what we call the EA288 Evo. So it was revised again in 2018 for the cars that are coming in from 2019 onwards, and this being the 2019, of course you have a revised version, and the revisions is mostly in terms of improving the reliability of what this engine has to offer. So let's talk about the power figures before I talk about the problems that you're likely to find when you buy this particular car. So the power figures on this engine, again, variety of engines of this car. One thing I love about the Tiguan is the idea that you can get a variety of engines. Petrol versions from a 1.4, a 1.5 to a 2 liter, and the diesel you have a 1.6 and a 2 liter that has a lot of variants. I think around 5 variations of the 2 liter. And this is one of that variation. So this one is, I can say, the entry powered level engine, because this one will give you around 148 HP and 340 Newton meters of torque. But from there you have different variants of this particular engine, those that can give you around 190 HP all the way to 240 horsepower. So when you're buying this car, just get to understand that. I think the most interesting one would be the one that gives you around 237 HP and 500 Newton meters of torque. I think that would be a thrilling one to drive. But these are the type of engines, or the type of level of engines that we import in the Kenyan market space. And talking about this, what are the fuel economy numbers that you're likely to get when you buy this particular car? So this is able to give you around 16 to 18 kilometers per liter, and that is dependent again on how you drive this particular car. Paired to this car, if you're buying this car kutoka pale DT Dobby, I think it will come with an 8-speed automatic. But if you import this car, you're likely to get it in either a 7-speed DSG or a 6-speed manual. But this particular one, you get it with a 7-speed dual clutch transmission. When you're buying this particular car with this particular engine, what are the common likely problems that you will encounter? I think the the only one that we know of right now is the variation in terms of the sulfur content in our fuel currently. So this car is rated Euro 6, and currently in Kenya, you know, on paper they say we are rated at Euro 4 in terms of the diesel quality. And so you'll run into problems like the EGR valve clogging up and the DPF as well clogging up. So if you buy this car again, it's quite easy. Make sure you clean your EGR most frequently, and also if you can, just delete the DPF or get rid of it, and I think you'll have an awesome experience owning and driving this car. And this car being a diesel, again, I would recommend personally, do your short service intervals. When people are doing 10,000 kilometers, piga yako 6 ama 7. If umeenda sana, do it at 8, and that will give you an optimum reliability on this particular engine. So let's get to the interior of this car and see what options that this car offer in the interior, and does it really match up to its competition, especially the Honda CR-V. The VW Tiguan is a 5-star rated SUV, and it comes packed with a lot of safety features. Some of the convenient features that you find in the VW Tiguan are like the start and stop technology, the park assist, the 360-degree parking cameras, and if that is not all, you have your auto hold. And auto hold is quite important, especially when you're doing your uphill starts or your downhill starts. It's quite important for safety for any driver that is planning to ply any roads in Nairobi and Africa at large. And as if that is not all, for your rear passengers, you also have heated seats for both. You have a USB charging port and a 12-volt socket in case you need more power to power up your devices. One special thing that you'll find in the VW Tiguan that you'll not find in most cars in this category or competition is the selectable drive terrain. So these you can actually change from different driving modes: snow, off-road, highway, just to give you an awesome driving experience depending with where you want to go and drive this car. Something else that is actually more interesting, especially if you're planning to have an adventure with this car, is the storage. Glove compartment, you have another one here, you have a second one here, and as if that is not enough, you have another one here where you can keep your phone. You have your 2 cup holders here that have a button that you can hide them and also release them when you want, which is quite nice. You have another storage compartment here, and below your seats you have another storage compartment. Just look at that. Quite awesome. So let's check out the rear of this car and see how does it actually feel to be at the rear of the VW Tiguan. Of course, practicality is one very important thing when you're buying a crossover SUV, and the Tiguan doesn't let us down. There are 3 things that I need you to know about this particular generation of the Tiguan in comparison to the previous generation. So one, it's 60 millimeters longer, it is 30 millimeters wider, and as if that is not all, between the wheelbase you also have 77 more millimeters on the wheelbase. So it makes this car quite practical and spacious when it comes to the interior. So the interior here is clothed with Alcantara in the middle, but one thing that can make this car again another enticing option to buy is that you can actually recline your seats mbele, so that you have a lot more boot space at the rear, and also you can recline your seats to up and down just to make it quite comfortable, which is quite amazing. So let me put her back. Something else that will be more interesting to you when you buy this car is this car table here. So when you put it in stage 1, it actually works as a very nice place to just place your laptop and work while the driver, who is Mr. Mbugwa in this case, is trying to chauffeur you to locations that you like. And if you are done with that, and you have, especially those people who have kids who like coming to the car with donuts and they sprinkle all the crumbles everywhere, this is the best alternative. Once they see this, they will actually feel free to use these as their table to put their food, their drinks, and just enjoy an awesome family moment. And the dad there, you'll be driving knowing that your car is not going to be made dirty. And as if that is not enough, just like in the CR-V, you have a hidden cup or bottle holder just hiding beside that tray, which makes it quite interesting. Now finally, before I leave here, you remember our net that keeps the pet behind. So imagine you have your girlfriend who is afraid of your dog and you want your dog to stay here. Again, VW have made it possible to do that. You just strap this down and have your stay here while you drive your car. Quite interesting. So let's drive this car and see what exactly is the advantage of having a 2000cc turbocharged engine diesel in comparison to having a 2000cc the E8888, which is a petrol version. Where does this car actually shine? So how does it feel to drive the VW Tiguan? Instantly you get in the Tiguan and it's a diesel. You listen to the diesel grunt and you know the engine is different from what you're used to driving. And that is the only thing you'll be listening to, because VW has made awesome build quality in the Tiguan, so you won't be listening to any external noise. So the build quality is nice, the noise cancellation is perfect. But let's talk about something is more interesting. The engine paired to the 7-speed TSG has a good and a bad. In terms of fuel economy, I can tell you for a fact. Right now I'm looking at my average fuel meter. It's telling me I'm averaging 15.5 kilometers to a liter. So in terms of fuel economy, of course, this car is the best in this class. In this class is the best. You won't find a better car in terms of fuel economy than this, unless you're doing the hybrid CRV. But this, remember, it's not a hybrid. So you have the low end torque, you have the power, you have the fuel economy, and you have the towing power. So that adds on to a lot of advantages of getting the VW Tiguan compared to, let's say, getting a hybrid. Something else that I've noticed again is with the DSG transmission. So when you want to go, the DSG is known for proper upshifts. Let's listen, it snaps into gears smoothly and nicely and faster. But when you want to slow down and you want to have to downshift, that's where the DSG loses it, because it is quite slow to downshift. If this car was a performance car, it had those exhaust burps, it would be an interesting thing, because you know those delayed downshifts will have been mwah. I know the young guys will love that, but the older guys will be like, why are we not downshifting? Why are we not downshifting? So that is something that you need to know when you're driving this car. You will upshift quite well, but downshifting, so I don't know. I think VW is high time, and Audi did something about the DSG transmission to just make it smooth. The same way it upshifts, let it also downshift quite smoothly. Away from that, you have a telescopic steering wheel, which is multifunctional again, and you can adjust all your necessary things on the steering without lifting off your hand. The cruise control, which is adaptive, is placed right well on your left fingers, and it makes this car feel awesome to drive on open roads. You set your cruise control, tag it to the car in front of you, and just allow the car to drive as you think about the important things in life when you own this car. That's perfect. The seats are also quite comfortable, and they tuck you in quite well, and you sit in a commanding position which is identical to any SUV. It gives you that commanding drive, and it gives you the idea that you can just tackle any terrain with this particular car. And remember, these are soft roaders, so it's not an actual proper off-road SUV, but you can take it to few challenging places and it will do all right because of the 4Motion AWD system. Something else that I miss is the vents that cut across the entire dashboard. On this particular car, it's not like the Passat, so they took that one away and gave you a conventional air vents that are just stuck to your dashboard 1, 2, 3, and 4. I wish they would have translated the front of this car again to the interior. That would be perfect. Something else that I really love, and it's something that they have borrowed, I don't know, can I say, from the CRV, because the CRV was so beautiful in terms of cabin space. The cabin space in this car is beautiful. So from the previous generation, as I said earlier, this car is longer, 60 millimeters longer. It is 30 millimeters wider, so it makes you feel like you're sitting inside a big boat. And even the wheelbase has been increased, I think, by 77 millimeters, so it makes the cabin space just feel spacious and easy for even both the rear passenger and your passenger at the front. So quite nice. And so, as tradition dictates, I think it's time where we push this car from 0 to 100 and confirm how does she actually fare against the competition. And the competition here is the CX5 Diesel. I know it's a 2.2 turbocharged with very good power outputs, but again, here we have a DSG and we have also a 2-liter diesel engine. So I'm curious, will she perform better than the Mazda CX5 Diesel ama zitakuwa neck to neck? And before that, let me remind you that this car being a diesel, it requires quality fuel, and there's nothing in the market right now better than Shell Fuel Save Diesel. It guarantees you a cleaner engine, it gives you proper lubrication, and the additives will guarantee you lower carbon buildup, and that is what you need for any diesel engine at the moment. You need your EGR valve not to clog up, you need your DPF not to clog up. So dereva mjanja, make sure you fuel your car with Shell Fuel Save Diesel. So let's do this. I have my draggy on already set. I'm going to change my driving mode to let me see, and sport. And I'm going to floor the car. Are you ready? In 1, 2, 3. Come on. Yes. Yes. And brake. What do we have? What do we have? What do we have? Okay. 0 to 100 in 13.97 seconds. 13.97 seconds. And 100 to 0 in 4.83 seconds. So that's the braking distance, which is quite decent. I think for any diesel car, this car is rated for around 10 seconds, 0 to 100. So her giving us 13 seconds is quite normal for this car. So let's go do value for money and discuss, does this car make a value for money proposition, and why would you choose to buy this particular car and not the rest in the class or competition? So let's talk about value for money. So how much will the VW Tiguan 2000cc turbocharged diesel set you back when you decide to buy this one that I'm reviewing today? This one will set you back around 4.35 million Kenya shillings. And if you put the competition besides it, and we're starting with the recently reviewed Honda CR-V, which will set you back around 4.6 million Kenya shillings. Talk about the Audi Q5, which will set you back about 4.6 million Kenya shillings. Technically the same car, just a difference in the design language around the engine. So this one is transversely mounted, while the Audi Q5 is longitudinally mounted, and then the Audi Q5 has the Quattro, you remember the all-wheel drive system we talked about, and this one has the Haldex all-wheel drive system. So does this car make a value proposition? Before I tell you whether this car is good for your money, I'll tell you where this car wins. This car wins in terms of very good fuel economy, and it's only that in Kenya we've not really embraced the culture of towing, but this car has the ability, being a diesel, to tow quite comfortably and tow huge loads at the rear. So that's one advantage that you get by owning the VW Tiguan. Another place where this car really shines in comparison to the petrol versions, and this one they are going head to head with the Mazda CX5 when it comes to overtaking, because it's a diesel and you're accessing all your torque at the low bands. It means it's quite easy for you to just put your pedal down and you're ahead of all the other cars on the road. So if it's a car that if you're planning to drive a car and do your nice overtakes, especially in hilly places, then this is where the VW Tiguan diesel pretty shine. So significantly, those are the winning points. So instead of buying those other petrol versions like the 1400cc and deal with your belt driven engine, or the E8888 and deal with your chain and guides, I think this car provides a very good value proposition, as long as you take care of your DPF and you take care with your EGR that always clogs up when you drive in the Kenyan market space. I've been your host, Ibrahim Toloi, Papa Scoff himself, and I hope you've enjoyed this exciting episode of the VW Tiguan 2019. I can't wait to bring the 2020 version that has an updated facelift to just see how does it actually compare to this particular generation of the Tiguan. Bye bye and have an awesome and beautiful Sunday.